check out what I just got. It is a brand new package from a Discogs seller. I'm gonna unbox this today, show you what I got, and talk a little bit about the records within. First off, this is really well packaged. I'm glad I didn't go too deep with this because the records are right there. All right, here we go. This is the one that got me started on the entire package here. It is Blonde Redhead's 7-inch single for Vague, backed with Jet Star. This predates their debut self-titled LP from 1995. This was released in 1994, and the band just dropped it on Spotify. At first, I wasn't really familiar with this one, despite Blonde Redhead really being one of my favorite bands. When I listened to it, I was like, oh man, this really sounds like kind of your standard 1990 era artsy indie rock, which was signature to Blonde Redhead's style back there. I was like, wow, this really has a throwback to that era of Blonde Redhead. There's really only the one pressing. You've got two band members on the front and a little bit of a crack on the back, and it's on black vinyl. You don't see too many copies of this one out there, so I'm super excited about this. Next up is Crystal Antlers. Crystal Antlers were a kind of a noisy, like a neo-psychedelic noise rock band. I believe they were releasing music from 2006 to about 2014. They came onto my radar with their debut self-titled EP, which came out in 2008. They had two 7-inch singles prior to that for songs that were on that 5-song EP. 1 year later, they came out with this, Tentacles, their debut LP. I don't think it quite lives up to the power and noise elements that that debut EP had, but it's still pretty solid nonetheless. Next up is the Chambermaids and their EP or mini LP, Down in the Berries. This is from 2009. The Chambermaids were a resurgence era shoegaze band from Minneapolis. They really harkened back to the original shoegaze era though. And within that subgenre, the more pop-leaning bands like say Ride or Pale Saints. When I listened to this, I really dug it, so I am thrilled to add this one to my collection. I don't know if it was on colored vinyl or not. I believe it was just black wax. And yeah, it's just black wax, but I do love that kind of stamp on the label there. And it's a very thin, kind of flimsy cover, which is kind of interesting as well. Another shoegaze band, this one is called Locket, and the album is called Camera Shy. This is their only LP. It was released in 2012. Definitely a resurgence era shoegaze band. There aren't too many out there of this. It was only pressed to 500 copies, split between two different versions, I believe a white one and a black cherry. This is the black cherry vinyl, so a copy of 250 pressings. This band was from Philadelphia, but they only really released two things, both in the UK. This LP and a kind of extended or maxi single on 12-inch for a song called, I believe, Surrender. This one is a full length that has 8 songs on it. Let's take a quick look at the wax because I'm really curious about this one. They did not have any photos online, at least on Discogs. Okay, that's kind of cool. It's kind of like this magenta color. I don't really see any black in there, but I really like it. It really brings out the color in the sleeve, which for colored vinyl is a must for me. If it doesn't have any kind of tie-in with the sleeve or other artwork, what's the point of having the color vinyl, right? Okay, this one's an interesting one. I used to have it in my collection, but then I sold it or traded it in or something like that. And I always kind of regretted that as the band became more and more prominent in my collection. This one is Jason Molina and Pyramid Electric Company. In 2003, his band Songs Ohio released Magnolia Electric Company, which was kind of a transitionary piece, a culmination of Songs Ohio. After that album, they would transition the band name to be Magnolia Electric Company. This came out in 2004, and Pyramid Electric Company, so he's kind of throwing out some different call outs there. It's not his debut under his own name, but it is kind of his signature sound that is carried throughout all three of those monikers. Songs Ohio and Magnolia Electric Company being a little bit more full in terms of the musicians that play on it and so forth. This being probably along the lines of a lot of his other stuff under his own name, which is a little bit more stripped bare, which is kind of funny to say given that Songs Ohio is pretty stripped bare to begin with, but it is a little bit stripped down further, featuring more likely than not predominantly Molina himself. This is another one that I just had to pick up. I love this, and while Mate's Estate can always be a little bit hit or miss for me, this EP has my favorite song that they've ever done. It is a cover of Starman by David Bowie, and it is freaking phenomenal. This 4-song EP is really catchy, a lot of fun. Mate's Estate, this quirky indie pop duo, and this really follows suit. Kind of strange, weird sounds, especially for indie pop, but if you can tolerate some of that stuff, do check it out. At the very least, check out Starman by Mate's Estate. A little bit strange, especially if you're kind of diehard Bowie fan, but I think they do it some decent justice. Just a couple more. Wooden Ships, Volume 2. This is a compilation of out-of-print singles and rarities, so basically it's the second iteration of that. This is early stuff by Wooden Ships, that's SHJIPS, and this I believe is from 2010. It follows their first kind of 2 LPs, the self-titled Wooden Ships and their second one, Dose, and it predates by 1 year my favorite Wooden Ships release, which is called West. Kind of like Crystal Antlers from earlier, this is neo-psychedelic rock, but rather than kind of blending in noise rock, yes, it is very noisy, they do a lot more like stoner rock, almost like a doom metal type stuff, and that kind of trio of subgenres. Really cool, check that one out. And then finally, let's go back a few decades. 1960, a mono pressing of The Fabulous Wailers by the Wailers. This is quintessential Northwest early garage rock. And in fact, the Fabulous Wailers, or the Wailers as they are most often known, is cornerstone to being an influential garage rock band from that era. Came to influence some of the most notable bands in that area of the time. Those bands would go on to influence what would become punk rock. I am talking about the Sonics, and here are the Sonics. In fact, on this album, their debut from 1960, you will find Dirty Robber. Dirty Robber was covered 5 years later on the Sonics debut LP, Here Are the Sonics. And if you want to see a little bit more about the Sonics, check this out right here, because this is me talking a little bit about that album just a few weeks ago. So I will see you over in that video.